Let's rewind to when everything still seemed normal at least. That's how I remember it now. My wife Kate and I had been married for over a decade, and life felt steady. We had our routines, our shared jokes, and that quiet sense of comfort that comes after so many years together. Honestly, I thought we were happy, or at least I was. Then, Myra moved in next door. You know that feeling when someone enters the room and suddenly, everything shifts? That was her. She had this energy that drew people in blonde hair, always loose, a carefree smile, and an ability to make anyone feel like the center of attention. It didn't take long before she started hosting small get-togethers, wine nights, weekend barbecues, or just casual chats over the fence. Myra was the kind of neighbor who always had her door open, ready to welcome anyone who stopped by. And believe me, people did. I won't lie, I liked her right from the start. She had a way of making you feel noticed, you know? It wasn't like I was unhappy with Kate, but it was hard not to enjoy being around someone like Myra. She asked about my work, my hobbies, and seemed genuinely interested. It felt refreshing. But don't get me wrong, I wasn't looking for anything. I was still faithful to Kate, even if her late nights at work were starting to bother me. That's when things with Kate started to shift. At first I thought it was just job stress, longer hours, late meetings, her coming home exhausted and distant. We all have rough patches, right? I'd ask her how her day was and try to start a conversation, but it felt like I was talking to a wall. Her eyes were always glued to her phone, as if I wasn't even there. At first it was subtle, but eventually it was hard to ignore when my own wife seemed more interested in her phone than in talking to me. Myra's get-togethers became my little escape. There was something carefree about being around her, and those nights felt like a break from the tension that was growing at home. I'd go over, have a drink, chat with Myra and the other neighbors. Kate, of course, had no interest. If she wasn't working, she was too tired or had to get up early. More and more, I found myself alone at those parties, with Myra's laughter filling the air and her eyes locking onto mine a little longer than what could be called friendly. It wasn't long before Tom, my best friend since college, started teasing me. "You seem different, man," he'd say. Tom knew me well, we'd been through a lot together, so he could tell something was up. "I'm just saying, Myra's got you smiling. What's going on?" I'd brush him off, of course. I wasn't doing anything wrong, just trying to get a little space from the cold silence that Kate brought home every night. And then there was Martha. Every neighborhood has a Martha, the older lady who watches everything from behind her curtains, well-meaning but a little too nosy. She'd catch me on my way back from Myra's and say things like, "Be careful, James. That girl's trouble." Or "Not everyone who smiles at you has good intentions." I'd laugh it off, but part of me wondered if she was right. What did it say about me that I was happier at my neighbors' parties than in my own living room? Then came the first real warning sign. Kate started coming home even later, and it wasn't just the hours, it was her attitude. She'd walk in tired, but also content. I could tell something wasn't right, but I was too scared to dig deeper. When I'd ask, she'd brush it off with, "Work's just crazy right now," before dropping her purse and heading straight to the bedroom. Sometimes she barely even glanced at me. I tried to be understanding. Work was tough, sure, but I couldn't shake that nagging feeling that something was off. One evening, Myra hosted another one of her casual gatherings. This time it felt different, more intimate. We ended up sitting alone on her porch, just the two of us. The conversation flowed easily. She leaned in close, asking about things. Kate never seemed interested in my love for hiking, my dream of starting a small business one day, and she really listened. As the night went on, she lightly touched my arm when she laughed, her eyes meeting mine in a way that made my stomach tighten. "James," she said with that teasing smile of hers, "do you ever feel like you're missing out on something? Like there's a whole world out there waiting for you to take the first step?" I laughed it off, playing dumb. "I'm a married man, Myra," I said, though I wasn't sure who I was trying to convince. "Yeah, but are you happy?" she shot back, her eyes piercing into mine. That question stayed with me long after I left her porch that night. Days passed, and things with Kate didn't improve. In fact, they got worse. She was like a ghost, barely acknowledging me, her phone glued to her hand all the time. That nagging feeling inside me grew louder. I could sense something slipping between us, something I couldn't quite grasp. It wasn't just in my head, I knew her, and this wasn't the Kate I married. So yeah, I kept going to Myra's gatherings. I craved that feeling of being noticed, of being heard. And yes, I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't stop. Myra became my confidante. We never crossed any physical lines, but there was an unspoken tension between us, a what if that lingered in the air. But soon, everything would change, and I had no idea that my life was about to be turned upside down by someone who wasn't even my wife. Let me pick up where I left off. After those nights with Myra, things at home only got worse. The distance between me and Kate felt like a canyon, one I didn't know how to cross, but I never expected my gut feeling to turn into something real. It all started with a sleek, shiny red sports car. It stuck out in our neighborhood, so when I saw it dropping Kate off one evening, I couldn't help but notice. The car was stunning, a convertible with the top down, the kind that makes you wonder who's rich enough to own something like that. But I wasn't focused on the car, I was looking at Kate. As she stepped out, she looked different. Not just tired from work, but almost glowing, like she'd just had the best night of her life. I watched her say something to the driver, a wide smile on her face, wider than I'd seen in months. Then the car sped off, as if it was in a hurry to leave. I casually asked her about it, trying to sound normal. "Hey, you got a ride today? Nice car." Who was that? She didn't even hesitate. "Oh, just a taxi," she said, brushing it off like it was nothing, but she didn't meet my eyes when she said it. I pressed a little. "A taxi? Really?" It looked more like a Ferrari or something, I joked, trying to keep it light. "Some kind of fancy Uber," she snapped back, not loudly, but with a sharpness that stung. "It's just a car, James. Can I take a cab?" Without getting interrogated, I let it go that night. What else could I do? I didn't have proof of anything, just this gnawing feeling in my gut. But once suspicion creeps in, you start noticing everything. It was like my eyes were suddenly wide open to all the small things I'd been overlooking, and the more I paid attention, the more it felt like she was slipping away. That red car started showing up everywhere. Always the same shiny sports car, always late at night, parked outside her office. It became a pattern. Kate would text me around 6 or 7 p.m., saying she had to stay late to finish a project, or whatever excuse she could think of that day, and like clockwork, the car would be there, headlights glowing under the streetlights, almost mocking me as I drove by. I couldn't just ignore it anymore, so one night I decided to stick around. I parked a few blocks from her office, and when that red car pulled up, my heart sank. My whole body felt like it was buzzing, adrenaline, fear, anger all pounding in my chest. When the driver stepped out, I couldn't believe my eyes. It was David, her boss, slick, well-dressed, with perfectly combed hair like he had just walked out of a cologne commercial. He had this smug grin on his face as he casually strolled toward the entrance, and my stomach twisted into knots. I sat there, watching, and sure enough, about an hour later, out they came, David and Kate, side by side. I couldn't see much from where I was, but their body language said it all. They were close, way too close for a boss and employee. And the way Kate looked at him. I hadn't seen her look at me like that in years. When he leaned in and whispered something in her ear, she threw her head back and laughed. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. It took every ounce of willpower not to jump out and confront them right then and there, but I held back. I needed to be sure. That's when I started keeping a journal. Sounds stupid, right? Like something a teenager would do. But I didn't know how else to make sense of all the thoughts swirling in my head. Writing them down felt like the only way to see the bigger picture. I noted every time she came home late, every excuse she gave, and every night that red sports car showed up at her office. And man, that journal filled up fast. Kate was good at hiding things, though I'll give her that. At home, she acted like everything was normal, like we were just another married couple juggling work stress. But her phone? That was a whole different story. She started carrying it everywhere like it was glued to her. In the shower? Phone. Cooking dinner? Phone right there. She even took it to bed, holding onto it like it was her lifeline. I also noticed her password had changed. When had that happened? I had no idea, but it was just another thing that didn't sit right with me. Tom, my best friend, could tell something was off. He saw it in the way I talked, the way I carried myself, the fact that I stopped showing up at our usual Friday hangouts. "You all right, man?" he'd ask, and I'd lie, like always. Yeah, just busy with work, I'd say, knowing full well work was the last thing on my mind. He didn't buy it. Of course, Tom never fell for my BS, but he didn't push either. He just kept an eye on me, always letting me know he was there without saying too much. Things with Myra hadn't cooled down either. If anything, the tension had only grown stronger. She had this way of looking at me, like she could see straight through me, like she knew exactly what I was dealing with, even without me saying a word. Maybe that's why I felt comfortable opening up to her about the red car, about the suspicions gnawing at me like acid. I half expected her to tell me I was crazy, that I was blowing things out of proportion. But she didn't. She just nodded, as if she had known all along that something was wrong. "James," she said softly, her tone serious, "you deserve the truth whatever it is. You deserve that much." And I remember thinking how those words felt like a lifeline, pulling me up from the sea of doubts and fears I'd been drowning in. But I also knew that whatever truth I uncovered wasn't going to come easily, and part of me was aware that finding out would change everything. At that point, it felt like I was living two separate lives. One where I was just another married guy going through the motions, and another where I was this paranoid, obsessive detective, trying to piece together if my wife was really cheating on me. And let me tell you, that messes with your head. Every little thing starts to look like a clue, and every moment feels like it's teetering on the edge of some huge revelation. It's hard to pinpoint the exact moment I really knew that Kate was gone, but it probably started when she stopped talking to me entirely. Our evenings used to be full of conversations about everything: work, dreams, random thoughts from the day, but now there was nothing. We'd sit in the same room, but it felt like we were worlds apart. I'd try to ask about her day, make a joke, but she'd just nod absent-mindedly or give some half-hearted response, her eyes always fixed on that damn phone. It was like I had become invisible to her. That phone became a sore spot between us, not just because she guarded it like it held all the secrets in the world, but because every time I saw it, I saw the growing distance between us. When her password changed, that's when I knew I had to act. It wasn't about privacy anymore, it was about trust, or the lack of it. One evening, Myra hosted another one of her famous gatherings. By then, those little get-togethers felt like the only place I could breathe. Being around her was like stepping away from my miserable reality, and I needed that. So I went. And surprisingly, Kate decided to come along too. I didn't think much of it. Maybe she felt guilty, or maybe she was just putting on a show for the neighbors. Who knows? The point is, she was there, and so was that phone. I remember it so clearly. Kate was distracted, chatting with a neighbor, and I was off to the side, sipping my drink, when I saw it, her fingers tapping away on the screen, entering her new password. It was quick, just a few seconds, but I tried to memorize the sequence. I thought I had it, but later that night, when I tried it, my mind went blank. The numbers and movements blurred together like a bad dream. I cursed under my breath, knowing I'd lost my chance. That's when things got desperate. I started watching her, not casually, but actively, like some kind of creep. Every time she pulled out her phone, my eyes were on her fingers, trying to crack that code. But she was careful, and the chance never came. At least, not right away. Then, one night, fate threw me a bone. It was late, and Kate had already gone to bed. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through every worst-case scenario. And then, as if on cue, she rolled over, her phone lighting up beside her. Half asleep, she picked it up, and I knew this was my moment. I turned away, pretending to be asleep, but kept one eye open, watching as she lazily entered the code. My heart raced as I memorized every tap and swipe. That was it, the key to Pandora's box. I waited until she was fast asleep, her breathing deep and steady, before making my move. I knew I had only one chance. My hands were trembling as I reached for the phone and entered the passcode. When it unlocked, I let out a shaky breath, bracing myself for whatever I was about to uncover. And then I saw them, the messages. It felt like a punch to the gut, like my worst nightmares were coming true, right in front of me. There they were, texts, voice notes, photos, all between Kate and David. At first I tried to convince myself it wasn't that bad, maybe I was overreacting. But the more I scrolled, the clearer it became. It was like peeling away layers of a rotten onion, each layer more nauseating than the last. She told him everything: how she didn't love me anymore, how she felt stuck with me, like I was some loser. She even said she wished she had met him earlier to avoid all the misery. The worst part, how they joked about me. David, with his smug confidence, calling me pathetic, mocking my routines, the very things I thought made our marriage ours. It felt like someone had ripped my heart out and stomped on it. Then I found the invitation. A message from Kate to David, inviting him to a party at our house, my house. She told him to come over while I was at work. "Don't worry," she wrote, "he's gone all day. It'll just be you and me. Can't wait to finally be alone together." That line played over and over in my mind, like a broken record. She wanted him in our home, in our bed, with no remorse, no second thoughts. I don't know how long I sat there, scrolling through those messages, feeling like the ground was slipping away beneath me. Part of me wanted to wake her up, throw the phone in her face, and watch her squirm, trying to explain herself. But another part of me just felt numb, like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. Eventually, I put the phone back, crawled into bed, and stared at the ceiling until the sun rose. Everything felt different: the room, the bed, even the air I was breathing. I knew from that moment on, nothing would ever be the same. The next morning, after going through Kate's phone, everything felt unreal. You know those dreams that are so vivid and messed up that when you wake up, you wonder if they were real? That's how it felt, except there was no waking up, no relief. Kate acted like nothing had happened, getting ready for work without even glancing my way, clutching her phone as she breezed out the door. And me? I was left there, feeling hollow. The betrayal sat in my gut like a rock, making everything else seem small, insignificant. But I couldn't confront her, not yet. Not until I figured out what to do next. Myra could tell something was wrong. I probably looked like hell unshaven, dark circles under my eyes, wandering around like a zombie. She caught me outside one day as I was heading to my car. "Hey, stranger," she called out, leaning against the fence that separated our yards. "You look like you've seen better days. What's going on?" Just like that, it all came spilling out. I hadn't planned on telling her, not really. But there was something about the way she looked at me, the genuine concern in her voice. It was like she opened a floodgate. "Can we talk?" I blurted out, barely able to meet her eyes. I just need to talk to someone," she nodded, giving me that warm smile of hers. "Of course. Come over tonight. We'll have dinner, and you can tell me everything." That evening felt like some twisted therapy session. Myra's place was warm and inviting, candles on the table, soft music in the background. She made pasta, the smell of garlic and tomatoes filling the room, while I tried to hold myself together. Once we sat down, wine glasses in hand, I let it all out. I told her everything about Kate, the texts, the car, the lies. Myra just listened, nodding, never interrupting, letting me spill my heart out. By the time I finished, I felt like I'd been hit by a truck, but there was also a strange sense of relief, like I had finally unloaded this unbearable weight. "Wow," Myra finally said, her voice steady. "James, I'm so sorry. You don't deserve any of this." She reached across the table, placing her hand on mine. The warmth of her touch felt like a lifeline, but you can't just sit back and take it. You need to do something. I nodded, but what could I possibly do? I wasn't the kind of guy who yells or throws things. Confrontation wasn't in my nature. "I don't know what to do," I admitted, my voice cracking. "I feel so powerless, like she's taken everything from me, and I can't even fight back." Myra's expression shifted, something fierce flashing in her eyes. "Then fight back," she said, her voice hardening. "Hit them where it hurts. Make them pay for what they've done." How I scoffed, draining the rest of my wine. She's already living her best life, sneaking around behind my back like I don't exist. What am I supposed to do? That's when Myra leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Catch them in the act," she said. "Prove to everyone who they really are. Set up a hidden camera, catch them in your own bedroom. Once you have that footage, well, let's just say people like David and Kate don't look so powerful when they're exposed for what they really are." Her suggestion hit me like a brick. A hidden camera? It sounded ridiculous, something straight out of a bad movie. But as crazy as it seemed, there was a twisted sense to it, a way to regain control, to finally see Kate and David's lies exposed. "You really think I should do that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Myra didn't hesitate. "Yes," she said firmly, locking eyes with me. "You need to show them they can't just walk all over you." We sat there in silence for a moment, the weight of her suggestion hanging in the air. Then something shifted inside me. Maybe it was the wine, or maybe it was the anger bubbling beneath the surface, but I leaned in, my eyes never leaving hers. "You really think this will work?" I asked again. She nodded, a small smile on her lips. "Trust me, James. It's time you started taking care of yourself. I'll help you, whatever you need." And that's how it happened. One minute, we were talking about revenge, and the next, we were kissing hard and desperate, like we were drowning, and the other person was our only lifeline. I knew it was wrong, but in that moment, it felt like the only thing that was right. I didn't think about Kate, the consequences, or anything else, just the way Myra's hands felt on my skin, the way she looked at me like I was the only man in the world. We stumbled to the bedroom, shedding clothes, tangling together in a mess of limbs and breathless whispers. For the first time in a long time, I felt alive. Afterward, as we lay there in the darkness, I realized something, a truth I had been avoiding for far too long. I didn't love Kate anymore. Whatever love I had for her had been suffocated by her lies, her betrayal, the way she made me feel like nothing. Lying there with Myra, I knew there was no going back. There was no fixing what was already broken. The next day, Myra helped me set up the hidden camera. We placed it right in my bedroom, aimed directly at the bed where Kate and David thought they could carry on their affair undetected. As I stared at the camera's lens, I knew one thing for certain: the truth was coming, whether they were prepared for it or not. You'd think setting up a hidden camera in your own home would make you feel sleazy, like some cliché private investigator from a bad movie, but the reality was, I felt nothing but cold determination. Every part of me demanded justice. I wanted them Kate, David, the whole sick lie they were living to pay. Myra, meanwhile, was my rock, my partner in crime, the one keeping me grounded. I remember standing next to her in my bedroom, looking at that tiny camera hidden among the books on the shelf, its unblinking eye aimed right at our bed. "Are you ready?" she asked, and I just nodded. There was no turning back now. The waiting was the hardest part. The days dragged on painfully slow, each one feeling like an eternity as I anticipated what I would uncover. Then it happened. Kate sent me a text, like clockwork, saying she'd be working late and that I shouldn't wait up. A line that used to mean nothing now felt like a hammer to the chest, but I played my part, just as she expected. I got home, made myself dinner, sat on the couch, and waited for the show to start. I'll never forget the sound of the door opening. Kate's familiar laugh, followed by David's low voice. Rage surged through me as they walked past me without even acknowledging I was there, like I was some ghost in my own house. "We're going to discuss some work in the bedroom," she said casually, like I didn't already know exactly what was going on. "Sure," I replied, my voice calm, masking the disgust boiling inside me. And just like that, they disappeared into the bedroom, closing the door behind them. Time dragged on as I sat on the couch, pretending to read a book, listening for every noise from the other room. Laughter, the rustling of sheets, it was all the confirmation I needed. My plan had worked. Now I just had to wait. The next day, while Kate was at work, I retrieved the footage. My hands trembled as I plugged the camera into my laptop, fully aware of what I was about to witness. And there it was, high-definition betrayal. I watched as my wife, the woman I had loved and trusted for so long, kissed her boss. They stripped away every last shred of dignity and respect, right there on my screen. They didn't bother being subtle or discreet. To them, I was nothing more than an afterthought, the clueless husband too blind to see what was happening in his own house. I felt sick, disgusted, but at the same time, there was a twisted satisfaction in having proof. I had them, caught red-handed. Now it was my turn to decide how the story would end. I wasn't about to let them off easy. That wasn't how this was going to play out. I uploaded the video anonymously, of course, to a popular social media site, releasing it into the world like a virus. Within hours, it spread like wildfire. I watched as comments flooded in, with strangers dissecting every frame, calling out Kate and David for what they were. Some of the comments were harsh, but I didn't feel guilty. They deserved every bit of shame, every ounce of ridicule thrown their way. The fallout began quickly. David got the call first, I knew, because I made sure the video circulated through his office's internal network. There was no way to keep something like that quiet in a place like his. He was called into a meeting with the higher-ups, and from what I heard, it didn't go well. Yelling, doors slamming, the works. Apparently, having your affair broadcast online doesn't bode well when you're in a position of power. Kate found out soon after. At first, she couldn't believe it. "This has to be some kind of sick joke," she said, staring at her phone in disbelief as the video played on a loop. But then, like flipping a switch, her disbelief turned into fury. "How dare you?" she screamed, her voice sharp and venomous. "How dare you do this to me? You've ruined everything." I just stood there, letting her words bounce off me like they meant nothing. "I ruined everything?" I asked, my voice eerily calm. "You ruined it the moment you decided to sleep with David." It was like a dam bursting. She threw everything at me, not just words, but excuses, twisted accusations, the whole lot. "You were always so passive," she shouted, pacing back and forth like a trapped animal. "You never fight for anything. I couldn't live like that anymore." The irony was almost laughable. Here she was, accusing me of being passive, while she had been sneaking around with her boss behind my back. "I'll leave you for David," she threatened, her voice cracking as tears filled her eyes. "At least he understands me. At least he makes me feel alive." That's when it hit me. I felt nothing. No sadness, no anger, just relief. Relief that I no longer had to pretend, that I no longer had to fight for someone who had never intended to fight for me. Good, I said, meeting her gaze with a steady calm. Go to him. Because we're done, Kate. There's nothing left here. With those words, I turned and walked out of the room, leaving her alone to face the wreckage she had caused. The next day, I filed for divorce. I thought I might feel guilty, might have second thoughts about ending a marriage that had once meant so much to me. But as I signed those papers, all I felt was freedom. The kind of freedom you feel when you finally let go of something that's been weighing you down for years. Kate begged, pleaded, tried to negotiate her way out of it, but I was done listening. She had made her choice, and so had I. For the first time in a long time, I felt happy, and that happiness wasn't tied to revenge or payback. It was about reclaiming control of my life, rediscovering my own joy, and walking away from the toxic mess that was my marriage. The best part? I didn't have to look back. While Kate and David were left picking up the shattered pieces of their lives, I was already moving forward into something new, something better. It's funny how quickly life can turn upside down. One day you think you're living the ideal suburban life, and the next, everything is falling apart around you. Before you know it, you're rebuilding from the ruins, discovering something better, something genuine. That's how it felt for me after Kate and I split. It wasn't some fairy tale ending where everything fell perfectly into place, but it was real, and that's all I had ever wanted. The aftermath of the scandal hit harder than I expected, at least for Kate and David. I didn't feel bad for them at all. They got what they deserved, plain and simple. David lost his job almost immediately after the video went viral. His company didn't appreciate one of their top executives being caught on camera having an affair with an employee. Kate? Well, her office wasn't thrilled to learn that their model employee had been hooking up with her boss during company time, so they let her go too. Just like that, their perfect little world came crashing down. But that was their mess to deal with, not mine. For me, life felt lighter. I wish I could say I had a big plan for what to do next, but the truth is, I didn't. I just knew I had to keep moving forward, and I wasn't doing it alone. Myra was there through all of it, the chaos, the divorce, the whispers from neighbors, the awkward stares when I went out. She was my constant, my rock, the one who never wavered no matter how messy things got. I remember sitting on her porch one evening, sipping wine as the sun set over the neighborhood. What now, I asked, gazing out at the fading light. She shrugged and gave me that easy smile of hers. Now we start fresh, she said. You deserve a new beginning, James. We both do. It was simple, but it was the truth. We started talking about our future, a real future one, without lies and betrayal. Myra helped me realize I deserved to be happy, to be with someone who truly cared. As much as I hated to admit it, Kate's betrayal was the wake-up call I never knew I needed. Kate tried to reach out a few times after the dust had settled. She sent texts, made phone calls, even wrote a handwritten letter, all full of regret and apologies, saying she missed me and wanted to talk. I didn't bother reading most of it because deep down I knew it wasn't really about me. She didn't miss me, she missed the stability, the safety net I had always provided. But that ship had sailed and I was too far gone to care. I didn't need her pity or her excuses, and I definitely didn't need her back in my life. The divorce was finalized quicker than I expected. We divided everything cleanly. I didn't fight her for the house or try to drain her financially. I didn't need to. I was already free, and that freedom was worth more than any money or property we could have fought over. When the final papers came through, I felt closure, like a door had slammed shut on a chapter of my life that I was more than ready to leave behind. Myra and I talked about taking a trip, a real vacation to unwind and leave everything behind. A beach sounded perfect: sand, waves, the smell of salt water. More than that, the thought of being far away from the memories, the neighbors, the gossip felt like a breath of fresh air. Let's do it, she said one evening, her eyes lighting up at the idea. Let's go to the beach, just you and me. No drama, no stress, just us. It wasn't about running away, it was about starting over. And that's exactly what we did. We packed our bags, booked a cozy little place by the ocean, and set off to celebrate our fresh start. I remember standing on that beach, the waves crashing at my feet, holding Myra's hand and reflecting on how far I had come, how much had changed, how much I had changed. It wasn't a fairy tale, life rarely is, but it was real, and it was real, and it was mine. As for Kate, last I heard, she was struggling to find steady work, bouncing between temp jobs and trying to piece her life back together. I didn't feel sorry for her. She had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. She reached out one final time before the divorce was finalized, saying she needed closure and wanted to see me face to face. But I couldn't do it. I couldn't sit across from her and pretend we could ever make things right again. I was done, and nothing she said would change that. David. He pretty much vanished. He quit his job, sold his car, and probably moved to another city to start over. It was pathetic, really, how quickly he fell apart once everything collapsed, and Kate was left behind trying to figure out how to pick up the pieces. But that wasn't my problem anymore. The beach trip with Myra was exactly what I needed: a chance to breathe, to let go, to start fresh. We spent our days lying in the sun, swimming in the ocean, talking about everything and nothing. Each day, I felt more and more like the person I used to be before all the lies, the betrayal, and the hurt. Looking back on everything that happened, it's easy to think I should have seen it coming, that I should have done things differently. But the truth is, I don't regret any of it, not anymore. Because in the end, that betrayal forced me to see things for what they really were. It broke me, sure, but it also rebuilt me and made me stronger. And that's a lesson I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. Myra and I are doing well, really well. I'm not going to say it's perfect because nothing ever is, but it's honest. And that honesty, that openness, is worth more than any picture-perfect marriage ever could be. We're planning on traveling more, seeing the world, living the kind of life I always dreamed of but never thought I could have. So yeah, Kate's gone, and David is just a ghost from my past. But I'm still standing stronger than ever, ready for whatever life throws my way. Because in the end, that's what it's all about: moving forward, no matter what, and finding peace in the chaos. And for the first time in a long time, I've found that peace,